All right, so we're talking about your introduction. Your introduction should establish the relevance of your topic for your audience. The audience needs to understand how your topic affects them. What does this mean to them? You need to answer the question, what's in it for me? You need to make sure that they know that if they'll listen, they're going to be provided with credible information that will benefit them. Every speech has to answer that question, or you will lose your audience. If you don't in your introduction, if you don't convince them that there's something in it for them, what you're signaling in your introduction is that it's okay now to pull out my phone and start making plans for the weekend, go ahead and connect with my buddy, check my Facebook page, scan my social media, post that thing to Instagram that I've been meaning to post all morning long. If you don't show me why it matters to me, I'm going to tune you out. That's the basic fact. That's the basic truth of the matter. So your introduction is where you do that. You have to capture their attention right there. And remember that your credibility is going to be based on that initial impression that you give in that introduction. The introduction is the key to your entire speech. Everything you're going to say, you could have the best speech in the world crafted with tremendous main points and powerful subpoints and a connecting story that ties it all together and a conclusion that's going to absolutely drive the point home that they'll never, ever, ever forget these 5 minutes they've spent with you. But if you fail in that 30 seconds of your introduction to get their attention, none of that matters. They won't hear any of it. They'll catch it in bits and snatches. It won't make sense to them, and they won't remember it. So your introduction is absolutely critical to the rest of your speech. Now, one of the things you have to do in your introduction, along with everything else I've talked about that we're cramming into that 10% of your speech, is you need to preview the main ideas of your speech. A preview lets the audience know what you're going to be talking about and why you're talking about it. And it identifies the main ideas that you're going to share with them about that subject. So you've got the subject, you've got the why, and you've got the supporting main ideas that just briefly stated, just like you did in your thesis statement. If you wrote a thesis statement, you have that thesis statement gets worked in right here. It is a very brief overview. It covers it all in one sentence. What you're talking about, why it's important, and how you're supporting that. So be sure that that is included in your introduction. Your audience should have a clear understanding of what you're going to be talking about by the time you finish your introduction. So if I gave you 10 minutes to give a speech, and if we were in a classroom, I would even do this just to demonstrate to you what I'm talking about. If I gave you 10 minutes to give a speech, and then 1 minute in, I interrupted you and said, it's over, done, something has come up, we have to be finished, right here, right now. At that point, your audience should already have a clear picture of what you're talking about and a preview of what you plan to say next. Now, they don't have all the vital data. They don't have all that body of persuasion. But if I were to turn at that point to the audience and ask them what you were going to be talking about and what points you were going to be making, they should be able to tell me what those are. If they can't, you have not succeeded in doing your introduction in a way that will benefit your speech. So it's very important to remember these things have to be, need to be, are critical to your introduction. They tie everything together. They draw your audience in, and they help them pay attention throughout the length of the speech. Now, your book, Chapter 11, concludes with some common mistakes that you ought to avoid whenever you're preparing your introduction. And I'm going to cover those briefly. First of all, don't forget to prepare. If you don't prepare, it's telling your audience that you don't care. If you don't take the time to commit yourself to getting ready and thinking through, and you just say, well, I'm just going to get up there and speak off the cuff, and I'm just going to say whatever comes to me. I know enough about this that I really don't need to prepare anything. that sends a very bad message to your audience. They won't forgive you for it. Listen, their time is valuable, just like your time is valuable. Don't waste their time. Secondly, don't pretend to be something that you're not. Audiences have an innate ability to detect what is false and what is fraudulent. People know. And so whenever you pretend to know something you don't know, you pretend to feel something you don't really feel, if you may get away with it for a moment, you may get away with it with some people, but I'm going to tell you right now, there are folks in that audience who will recognize the fraudulence in your expressions, and it will immediately turn them off to what you're saying. You won't get anything else across. You won't accomplish anything that you're trying to accomplish simply because you pretended to be something that you're not. Another thing that you don't need to do is don't rely on gimmicks. Treat the audience fairly. Don't trick them into paying attention. Because if you trick them into paying attention, then in the end, they're not going to pay attention. If an introduction doesn't suit your topic, don't use it. This is where we came into saying, don't use some shock sentence that has nothing to do with your topic. That's a gimmick. Your audience will quickly realize it, and they'll turn you off. Now, the next one's one that I struggle with. Don't be long-winded, says the pot to the kettle. Under ordinary circumstances, your introduction should be about 10% of your speech. If you persist in introducing your ideas over a longer span than that, you will exhaust your audience before you get around to making your main point. So make sure that your introduction is succinct, it's on point, you get through it in that, like I said, if I interrupted you 1 minute into a 10-minute speech, you need to be, at that point, transitioning to your first main idea. That's important. Don't overstay your welcome in your introduction. It costs you time that you need to make your case, and it loses the attention of your audience. And finally, don't do the introduction first. The rest of the speech should be complete, and then you go back and you compose the introduction. It makes it easy to make good decisions about what you need to do, what will tie your audience in. That quote that will wrap around the whole thing, that's going to be easier to discern at the end when you know everything that's going in than it is at the beginning when you're maybe still in an exploratory stage of figuring out how you're going to flesh these ideas out. That wraps up chapter 11.